found the Midwest Motoring Podcast. We're an automotive podcast about just about, well, everything automotive. From news, reactions, reviews, and everything and anything in between. We're kind of like one of those long road trips you take where you get lost and you don't know where you're at, but suddenly you find where you're going and you look back fondly on that journey and go, that was half the fun. So come along and enjoy the ride with us. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Midwest Motoring Podcast. My name's Matt Pesconis. I'm your host. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Jess Myers and James Fisher. How you guys doing?
Doing good. It's another day, another dollar. Let's talk some cars here.
Well, we're not getting paid for this.
No, that's true.
That's true.
Even if we did get paid, it would be like a couple cents.
Yeah.
So, and most of those wait until like you get up to like $100, and then it's like, oh, here's your first $100, and you're like, oh, that was like a year and a half ago. But, you know.
That's how Twitch works, too.
Is that how Twitch works?
Mm-hmm. I've gotten $200 total from Twitch.
Okay. Well, there you go. So, yes, we are joined by our intrepid trio, right? And today's topic, I think, is going to be a pretty interesting one. We mentioned last week that we really kind of cut our teeth on automotive knowledge and automotive interest, not only on real cars, but on the digital ones as well. So this week we're going to be talking about the video games that we grew up with, the video games that really piqued our interest, and some of the new video games. I thought of this topic because Gamescom's going on right now out in Germany, well, digitally from Germany. But, and the Forza Horizon 5 is coming out, and I thought it would be a really good topic just talking about, like, what we experience, and then maybe give the listeners some, like, a short list of, like, maybe our top 10 together to be like, hey, we think these are, like, the go-tos right now. If you're interested in gaming, go here. So that's coming up on this episode of the Midwest Motoring Podcast. Video games. What are they?
That's not rhetorical.
That wasn't a rhetorical question. But, I mean, honestly, like, we talked last week about, our love of cars. And obviously, you guys kind of did your introductions over the last 2 weeks. And it kind of became a theme that, not only are we interested in real cars, but we also do a bit of gaming. Jess, how long have you been gaming?
I actually started, my dad had an NES. Used to play Mario and Duck Hunt, and so pretty much at an early age, I enjoyed gaming. Obviously, I was limited by how much I was able to play by my parents, but for
Joke's
my
on
birthday,
them. He does it for a living now.
Yeah, right.
You're right. It's funny. Now I have no limits, and I play way too much. But yeah, I mean, I got a PS2 for one of my birthdays when I was maybe 7, 8 years old. That was kind of my first console that I owned. Had some awesome games for that, including a Gran Turismo game.
Okay.
And that was a very, very early, it was a racing simulator style game.
That was number 3, right? Gran Turismo 3?
Yeah.
That was a good one.
It was way more complex than my 8, 9-year-old brain could process with car stuff, but I knew I liked cars and I liked racing. So,
and we'll kind of get into, I think, the games we grew up playing and what actual games we played in a bit. I just kind of want to know, like, James, same question. Like, when did you start gaming?
Roughly about the same. My dad had an NES. We had an SNES. We went to Blockbuster. We rented an N64 when those first came out before we could get one, and then we ended up getting one of those. And I've been playing, Mario, Duck Hunt, all those games on the early systems, and just been playing since I was a kid.
Really, since I guess home, entertainment systems have come about. And I was the same way. When I was born, we had an NES already, and we grew up playing the same games. Duck Hunt, Mario. We had the trackpad, so we did the Olympics as well.
Oh yeah.
And then fell into who had that? I think it was I think we still had it on the NES, but it was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Nice.
Turtles in Time and all that.
Yeah.
We grew up doing that. I can't remember when I got my first racing game though, and I'm stewing on that, and I think I found the right one, but I did play a couple card games before that. So I think, especially with automotive, and people being interested in the automotive hobby, a lot of people don't really know that a lot of kids get it from video games. They get it from either arcade games or arcade racers, because I played a lot more racing games in arcades prior to them being a really good one, I think, on home console. I can't even remember the name, but it would be the off-road racers, or the ones where you'd have like the 5 steering wheels across. You put in a couple quarters at the pizza joint and play that, or
they had the NASCAR one, like NASCAR
Daytona
2000.
Yeah, it was like Daytona Thunder.
Yeah.
Yep. So I played a lot of those before I ever had one at home. But it led, I think, really in my like high school and college days did I really start getting into cars, and really the more simulation side versus like the arcade stuff, because I think my first actual home racing or like car related game was Twisted Metal on the original PlayStation, which as a 13-year-old getting a PlayStation 1 for your birthday and getting Twisted Metal, was like, what is this? Oh. So James, what stuff? That's Jess. This is James. I don't know why I did that. What kind of games do you remember playing the most?
Like with racing games and
in
general,
any kind of games.
I really remember mostly like N64 is when most of my memories start for video games. Like the Super Mario 64, that was so fun. When that's one of the first games that came out that had, or the N64 was one of the first consoles that had 3D graphics,
right?
And it was just so much fun. I remember even like Mario Kart. That might be my first like memory of doing any sort of like racing game. It's not like a serious racing game, but it's just so much fun to just.
There's a lot of, I think, fist fights over Mario Kart that would disagree.
A lot of ruined friendships over that game. But yeah, I mean, like mostly racing games. I remember playing GoldenEye was one of the favorites. That was so much fun, and then it drifted into PS2. Xbox came out, and I had one of those, and it's just been a long stream of fun, like shooting and racing games ever since.
So yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, what consoles did you guys have like growing up, and like to get an idea of where you came from, where you were, and then where you are now? Jess, what did you have?
Yeah, so I very, very early age, I had an NES that was my dad's. He had that before I ever really got anything. First console I got, like I said, was a PS2. We started because they were cheaper with some PS1 games for the PS2. I had a game called Sled Storm, which was a snowmobile racing game, and that was pretty fun. And then as I went, kind of bought some of my own games, played like the Medal of Honor games, some of those like old school first-person shooter games, and then things like Need for Speed, Midnight Club, and even things like Burnout, just super, super arcadey kind of racing games, where it's not very simulation. They're not very realistic, but and I even remember before that my dad's laptop.
We
had Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2, and
on your
you
laptop,
play on a disc, and you pop it in, install the game on the computer, and it doesn't really happen like that anymore. But yeah, there's a couple car games back that early. So
James, you spent a lot of time with the N64, and then you said PlayStation 2. Where'd you go from there?
Definitely Xbox, and I've been an Xbox gamer ever since, specifically because of racing games, because the first Xbox had the joysticks. You could like modulate, and you didn't like the PlayStation. You just hit the button and it was on or off. You could do partial throttle in the corners or partial brake and stuff like that. So I really fell in love with Project Gotham. We talked about that last week, and then eventually the Forza series on Xbox, and that's been where my loyalties have been ever since.
Yeah, and I think for me it's exactly the same. Is that I got kind of an Xbox late. I didn't have one when it first came out. I had the N64, definitely played a lot of Mario Kart, PlayStation 2, got into Gran Turismos. And then once I kind of got through high school, I got a Xbox for Halo. I really liked Halo.
Oh, I love Halo.
And then I found Project Gotham Racing shortly after, and then shortly after that, the Forza series, Forza Motorsports. And my God, did I just love those games. And so I played the heck out of Forza and Project Gotham Racing. And then Gotham Racing 2 came out, and that's a mouthful. And I just remember soaking a ton of time into those games.
I think the best part of those games was the online play and some of the fun, like, unofficial game modes that people would do, like cat and mouse. Do you remember playing any
cat
of
and
those?
mouse.
You go on the Nürburgring, and, half the people in the race are in, like, little Mini Coopers, and the rest of them are in, like, Paganis and Ferraris and stuff like that.
Or remember when they had the SUVs and they brought out, like, you could be in a Hummer, right? So you'd have people in, like, smart car, and then people in Hummers, and the Hummers were trying to knock people off the course. That was a good time.
Yeah, so one of the ones that I really enjoyed was some of the Need for Speed games and Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition. I love the
edition.
I love the customization of the different vehicles that you could do. Go to the shop, get body kits, do kind of full customization, and they're a free roam. So before Forza Horizon, which I'm sure we'll talk about the Forza games later, but
sure.
They were some of the first kind of free open world roam car games. So you're driving around the city, you're doing whatever you really want to with the cars. You get to customize your own car and just enjoy driving around. There was no, like, you had to select a certain type of race before you even get into the game. You could just kind of cruise around, and that was super fun.
The Test Drive series kind of did that too.
Yeah, Test Drive. I didn't really play much of those, but yeah.
Test Drive Unlimited was the first place that I think it was the Pagani that I learned of there. Like, I never knew about that car until seeing it there. Same with some of the Mercedes-Benzes, like the Mercedes SLR, like the Mercedes McLaren SLR. I had never seen one, and then I saw it there, and I was like, oh my gosh. This was before I started finding Top Gear on the internet. So,
yeah, and I mean that's before you had, the internet was around, but you didn't have all these automotive blogs, and even if they were around, I'm sure you weren't following them. So
you had magazines that you had to really find.
Yeah,
not much YouTube either.
Not much YouTube. So you wouldn't really see all those cool, high-end exotic cars unless you were playing the game, and then you could get out and not really, really drive it, but experience it a little and. Oh, that's a really fun car. At least hear it. Yeah, you can at least hear what it sounds like, maybe.
Yeah, and I think that these games opened up a lot of people's exposure, especially, like, I remember when you could first get in the interior of a car. Like, that was mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. And I remember telling one of my friends, I was like, look, you can get inside of it and, like, see inside the car. And he's like, yeah, it's a car. And, like, I don't think I've properly, like, described it to him, like, no. In all other car games that I've played, you always get, like, you're looking out the glass over the hood. Like, that's as close to, like, cockpit view as you get. Other than that, it'd be, like, outside the car. And he's like, yeah, wouldn't you want to see the car? I was like, no, I actually drive better when I'm sitting inside the car and I'm looking through it, and it's like, I can see the steering wheel move, I can see all that, and it feels more like I'm actually driving a car, whereas if I think outside of the car, I feel like my input, like, there's lag, but it's just because you're not seeing the car react instantaneously.
Okay, well, here's an interesting question. So you're more of a cockpit guy. Jess, what's your preferred view when doing a racing game?
It really depends what style of game. Obviously, if I'm doing a simulation style game, I'm going to be cockpit. That's just how I think it should be done with simulation. But I also love stuff like Forza Horizon, where I want to see the car. I helped customize it. I did the colors. I did all that stuff. I want to see the exterior of the car. I just think the landscape's more beautiful. I think with those open world cruising games, it's a lot more fun doing it kind of over the top of the hood where you're seeing the full car and everything around you.
What about you, James?
I am front bumper view.
Okay.
I like the cockpit, but I think on a racing game, I'm really super competitive with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's too much on the screen if I'm in the cockpit view, and if I'm front bumper, I feel like I can see more and do more and have better reactions to things.
And that could also, I think, depend on the game and the technology behind the game, because certain games, I do feel like when you're on, like, the front bumper, you have a wider field of view, which could potentially give you a edge. Whereas if you're in like a cabin of a race car and your viewfinder and like seeing through the windscreen is like tiny, like yeah, it's going to give you a better edge. You're not dealing with the obstruction of the actual car, right? But I agree with both of you. I think when I started liking outside of the car camera angles was when games started adding in like movement of cars, like when they'd have like automatically deploying spoilers and stuff. Like that wasn't always the case. Like for the kids out there who are not listening to this podcast, because no kids listen to this podcast, but for those out there, like yeah, it didn't always look like this. It used to be a couple pixels. I remember playing. Oh shoot, I remember playing. I think it was the original. I think it was the original Test Drive, where it was like it looked like an old school CRT monitor, like for DOS or something, and it's just like lines going dit 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 dit. You're right, and you heard just like two noises, and they'd the like ticks would get closer together when you're speeding up and slowing down.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the Need for Speed Hot Pursuit on a computer, and you had your person that was the cop, and you had your person that was running away from the cops, and the only way you could really tell the difference was the noise and a red and blue light above one of the cars.
That would flash.
And that's basically, the graphics weren't good enough to really tell other than that. It was very difficult to see what was going on, and there were like spike strips that were being deployed and you could hardly see them.
Yeah,
so
it looked like a bunch of little pixels, but at the time we thought that was the coolest thing, and like it looked amazing.
Oh, it was revolutionary. We never saw anything like it. I mean, coming from NES where it's only side scrolling, there's no real three-dimensional images, that's a huge upgrade. Being able to drive forward on the screen and not sideways is pretty cool. So
yeah, and I mean it's really been cool. That's one of the biggest things I like about what technology has done for video gaming is all the car game technology has gotten so much better, and the graphics are super realistic now, and you can get all the weather and the rain and everything. It's just so cool to see.
Screw that! I don't want to race in the rain.
Well, I mean the simulation games nowadays, they're completely scanned tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Every indentation of the track is on the simulation of the track, which
it depends on the physics engine.
Exactly. Some are better than others,
right? And
there are known to be some that are definitely better than others. But there are certain games that have one-to-one scaled scans of those tracks, and
right.
It's crazy. I mean, stuff that you would never even think, like small little parts of the track that I know Matt's driven some of these tracks in a car, and it really is pretty much exactly the same as driving on the track.
Nowadays it is, yeah, for sure.
I think a good example of that is like Sebring, right? The backstretch at Sebring, you can almost feel the road on that, all the little bumps and everything like that. So
yeah, absolutely. I do think they get turn one wrong on most video games. There's a lot of big expansion joints on turn one, and at least in the last Forza game I played in Forza Motorsport, it did not like bump the car around as much as it should have. But then again, if you do that too much, it's not as fun, right? If you're losing control every single time, they have to build in some accessibility, which is a big part of how some of these games became simulations. They started off as slightly arcadey because they were more accessible, more people wanted to play them. But there's definitely a lot of games out there that aren't simulations, though. You mentioned Burnout. Burnout was fantastic. I remember Burnout 1 and 2 being just an absolute blast.
It's such a fun game. I had Burnout 3 Takedown, and it was, I mean, you're doing exactly what you shouldn't do with cars. You're intentionally hitting as many things as you possibly can in these scenarios to rack up the largest crashes possible. And it was a blast. I mean, that's all it was. It was just arcadey fun.
I wasn't much for the open world one, though. I didn't really care for that one.
Paradise?
I don't
Paradise.
think I played Burnout Paradise.
I liked that one. That was pretty good.
Wasn't?
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. I mean, it was just, I don't know, like, I mostly enjoy the more simulation games. I do like the Horizon series, but I do find myself playing more or spending more time on the simulation, like the actual, like, let's just go do a race and move on to the next one in the series kind of thing.
I think Horizon and what Forza's done, having two different separate titles for kind of their simulation style plus their arcade style, it was like an awesome move. It definitely opened up a lot of different avenues because they still have some of the implementation from the simulation in Horizon, like their graphics and weather engines and kind of just the detail of their worlds that they're creating. But then you also have just the fun aspects of just driving around and stuff like barn finds. Like you're driving around the map and you're trying to search for cars and just
barn
interesting
finds
stuff.
don't really work like that in the real world.
No.
You don't just go
you
up
don't
and find
a
one and go, "It's mine
$17
now.
million car
It's
in
mine.
the middle of a barn.
Dibs."
Yeah, no, usually if something like that happens, you have a really upset gentleman coming out with a 12 gauge.
Yeah.
Get off my property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sir,
yeah.
you know what you have? I know what I got. Get off my property.
They always know what
It
they have.
is a little bit unrealistic in that regard, but it is fun. I
Yeah.
mean, it makes it interesting. It livens up kind of the normal racing game.
I don't think PlayStation currently has an alternative. Like, they have Gran Turismo, which is fantastic, but they do not have something that competes with
No.
Forza Horizon.
They need a Gran Turismo arcade game, and they don't. The thing that a lot of people really love about the Horizon series is hopping on with their friends and just making it a social game.
Mm-hmm.
You're just driving around with your friends, hanging out, talking, chatting, taking pictures of your cars, having car meets virtually. Like, that's cool.
Think about how the pandemic played into that, right? Is like a lot of people couldn't get out, and so Horizon 4 was popular and a lot of people played it, but I think it actually had a longer tail and maybe not forced, but made Microsoft go, "Hey, why doesn't the Horizon game come out next?" They're using the old tech because Forza Motorsports is coming out with new tech, new physics engine. They're using the old tech, so it's like, get out another one right now while everyone's stuck at home.
Yeah,
with an escape.
You're
Yeah.
right. I mean, they teased Motorsports first, and then they're like, "Nope, we're gonna make a Horizon
That
game
one's
first."
taking a break.
Yeah, Forza. I think Forza 7 is. I got the message when I put it in the other day that it's end of life in like a couple weeks. They're not going to be supporting it anymore.
Oh wow.
But Forza Horizon 5 is coming out, and we don't know when Forza 8's coming. So I think that what you said,
2022
though,
probably.
probably. But I think what you said though is telling that it's that more community aspect. It's the other side of things with the hobby that it's a huge draw.
And you were absolutely right. Once things started moving, once we had big open worlds that were pretty to look at, I did find myself starting to drive outside of the car a bit more. In the arcade games are great for accessibility, getting people to enjoy the hobby. Just like it's almost like a cars and coffee, right? You get out. It's no big deal. People enjoy getting out and seeing these cars. They have a quick conversation, and then they move on about their day. It's easy and it's fun. Whereas I feel like the motorsport stuff is kind of and even like there's some much bigger simulations. iRacing, even the
Project Cars.
Project Cars Pro. Like there's some
Assetto Corsa.
Assetto Corsa. Like there's some really big simulation games out there that.
Well, and some of those are almost gate kept by the community, like especially if you want to get into
iRacing.
online
Oh, yeah.
competitive. Like,
Well, and I don't blame them because there is a bit of that. And
you do take it very seriously, and that and you're
you spend what?
if people are running into you in a simulation style racing game, yes, I can understand why it can be
How much do you
incredibly
think,
frustrating.
Like I know how much I was going to spend on a simulation rig, but like how much do you think one of those runs right now? Like for a good wheel, let's say ixnay on like a cockpit thing, but like a computer to play it, a monitor, and like steering wheel and pedals. Like how much do you think that's all going to cost?
I mean, it depends on what you want to do. I mean, I was looking the other day. You can get them for a couple $100. Now that's not including a display,
Right.
or a PC
or
if
a
you're running it
PC.
on that.
So I mean, the sky's the limit though with some of that stuff.
And that's what's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of these people take it very seriously. Like I was looking at Fanatec stuff, which is fantastic. And I think I was up to like $3,000 on like pedals.
direct drive,
Direct
and
drive box.
load cell.
A nice steering wheel that worked with Xbox. And that's the other thing is not all this stuff is universal. Now, granted, Fanatec is making some really good universal stuff that is good on Xbox, PC, and PlayStation. they're one of the brands that I pay attention to the most. I'm sure somebody's out there going to scream like, no, they're not the best. There's this one, and if you're not interested in like that level, like Thrustmasters makes good stuff.
Even the Logitech G9,
and that's
something.
But that's like a $400. That's like a $400 set, so it's not cheap. But then you can get like some Mad Cat stuff that's a little bit less expensive.
Yeah, but if you're wanting to go into anything that's at all simulation, I think you at least have to spend $300 to $400 on a wheel and pedal set. The ones that are lower end than that are going to be very, very coggy gear feel, very kind of. It's not going to feel great. Not saying that you can't perform well on them. Some people can adjust it pretty much any hardware. And, you see that true with any game. I mean, you could have a garbage setup and do really well, but
you're not. Yeah, if you're not great, I mean, the nicer the setup, the better, the greater the margin of error is going to be, right? Because you're going to have more feedback. But this is why people who play on like iRacing take it very seriously. If I spent, say, $3,000 on a rig, and that's just pedals and like steering wheel, that's not including a PC, that's not including a monitor, that's another $2,000-$3,000, right? Easy. And if you've got $6,000 into a hobby, you take it very seriously. And so I understand, and I actually kind of like how iRacing does it, where it's like, hey, you're getting a license for a simulation racing series, because it's like, hey,
membership only.
We don't let in novices into pro races, because I mean, look what happened at IMSA when they were letting pros race that had no experience racing digitally. Like they were just ramming each other in the first corner, and they're like, wait, we can't do that. And it's like, no, the organizers had to be like, treat this like a real race. You only get one off, and if you have to hit the reset button, you get one of them, right? And it's like, so don't mess up, because then you're out of the race. And they had like 3 or 4 guys just quit mid-race. So like the people who stick around it and really work at it hard, like, yeah, I understand why you'd be mad if all of a sudden some guy like me was like, I've never done this before. Let me get in and see what. Oh, look, everyone's making a right-hand turn on the first turn at Road America, and I'm just taking them all out.
Yeah, some guy that's used to playing Forza on an Xbox, who maybe he got a nice bonus at work or something, and he spent some money on a rig, and all of a sudden he's in, a real like semi-pro racing video game, and you're gonna make some friends.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. You're used to the arcadiness of being able to run into someone to soften your turn, and that's not how it works in real racing.
I never do that in Forza. I don't know what you're talking about.
Never. Our old co-host Mike is notorious for that. He's also notorious for using all of the
the assists,
and it used to piss me off
like
so
the
much.
Auto braking.
No, okay, he wouldn't use auto braking, but he'd leave the full line on. He'd leave traction control and stability management control on, and I tried to always and I'm only mad because he beat me a lot. But I would always try to match. Like if we're in vintage cars don't have traction control or ABS, so I'm not going to put it on the car. And we had Miatas that were racing. He had traction control, everything, and he put all the big powers on it. And we were like, what? Let's just go, all the way, do as much as we can, just blow the budget on this Miata and just spend as much as we can, build the most powerful one. And he beat me because he could get the power down. Well, that was because all the assists were on. Well, it's an NA. They don't have traction control or stability management. So, and that only bit him once. And it was whenever I'd race in trophy trucks, Forza did get it right, because trophy trucks they lift a wheel and turns and they slide. They don't actually turn that well. And so when we were racing Forza Motorsports and we're in these trophy trucks, all of a sudden now I'm kicking his butt, and he's like, I don't understand that. I hate driving these. They don't turn very well. I was like, it's because you got all the assists on and you just can't turn well.
You can't drift very well with traction control.
He was actually really a lot faster than me on a lot of the stuff, so I just would try to get him to turn them off so he'd spin a lot so I could actually win. But no, you do what you can.
Yeah, no, you got to, and you probably wouldn't I do a similar setup just because I don't know. I take it seriously enough that I want to just have fun with it and I want to win, but to me, I've tried it without the traction and stability and stuff like
tough.
that. It's really hard.
Mike and I are very competitive, and so I learned to do it without it just because I thought that's how I learned to race, right? Is I don't need ABS because I had no threshold braking. But for Mike, he's just doing it for fun. Now, he's a good driver, but he would leave it all on because he wants to have fun. He wants to set a good fast lap time, and I'm trying to like learn how the cars handle and learn the ins and outs. And so it's just a little bit different belief. But yeah, I don't mind that he put it on. Like it makes sense, and that's why they're there, is for people to have accessibility, right?
Yeah, and I will say that like I am fully aware. I think it was it 7 when it came out? They were doing a competition with the new GT40s at Le Mans to see who in the community could set the fastest lap. And I spent hours trying to do it, and I had all the assists, my normal setup, and I just couldn't do it. And I looked at who was doing it at the top.
No assists.
No assists.
Yeah.
You're faster. If you can do it well, you're faster.
Well, and it's also people who know the track and can sit there and say, okay, this is the best lap. Like, that's a big part of racing. And it's crazy because when I did my racing school, I did it at Sebring, and I think that was Forza Motorsports 3. And I raced at Sebring for hours, just learning the track, learning the ins and outs of it, right? Getting my markers right, learning where the turn-ins were. And I actually did pretty dang well in my racing school, and I was keeping up with karting champions and things because I knew the sights. I knew the pictures that I needed to see. Now, granted, the professionals, they were like, well, you're a little shallow, and like they were moving my line around, but I knew where I was going. Like I knew the track. I knew turn 1, 2, like up to turn 13, and it was like, that's all you needed to do. And having that mental log really helped, and that's why I think it's also pretty cool that professional drivers do this stuff too. They use iRacing, they use all these simulators to learn racetracks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you even see some of the pro Formula One drivers and stuff like do this on Twitch, and like they're starting to really enjoy the gaming side of it as well, which is really cool.
Didn't NASCAR do that last year?
They might have for 1 or 2.
Yeah,
right?
I think they did that when they shut everything down because they were like, "Oh crap, what do we do?
What are we gonna put on TV?
Yeah, what are we gonna put on TV?" And I think they actually aired on television a couple, NASCAR iRacing races.
There were a couple big races broadcast. Yeah, I don't know if they were NASCAR races, but
I think there was a couple with like racers from all different circuits that all kind of competed together, because I think like Verstappen and Lando Norris were in a couple of them, and like there were trophy guys. There were all kinds of different racing circuits all kind of racing together, and it was like these big races that they publicized because, yeah, you're right, these guys, they still want to race, but all the races were canceled.
It's almost like modern IROC, right?
Do you ever feel like, speaking of like the leaderboards, do you ever feel like people are like cheating the system sometimes to get those leaderboards?
I don't know how they're doing it.
Exploits.
Because if I knew what they were doing, I would be at the top of the leaderboards too. But I mean, that's kind of like racing history. If you're not cheating, you're not winning, right? Like,
right. Forza has the like little mark that says, "Oh, you did the lap clean," or "You did the lap dirty," right? And that they will always put the ones that do it clean above the ones that did it dirty. But if you're like 4 seconds faster to having a dirty lap, like at what point is it like, well, that's not a clean, like that's not a good time then, right?
Funny enough, I'm pretty sure a couple of the games actually have like started implementing like on their online like queues specifically for the not clean drivers. Like I think Project Cars, you actually have to have like a experienced driver like license in the game to be able to get into certain types of races, or else you're barred from, and you're going to be racing against other people that are smashing into each other.
I remember, I think it was Forza 5. We were sitting in the race, at the start when they're like counting down. And of course, this is actually when people used to still have microphones and headsets on, and they could talk to people too. And I was like, all right, everybody, let's not all start here. Let's drive carefully and slowly to turn 1, because on Road America, everyone guns it at the start and then just pile drives into each other at turn 1. Just everyone misses the braking zone and collapses. And we said, we'll start after turn 1. Everyone, and you kind of hear everyone go, "Oh, okay, whatever." And we did. Like, so everyone just kind of creeped up, staying in the positions we're at, and then once turn 1 hit, we went for it. But there were so many other times that we would start that race, especially at that track, and just people would just slam into each other, using each other as brakes. Oh,
yep.
That's why I always would then turn on simulation damage. So the first people, I'd like sit back and watch them just pile in, and then their race is done.
Yeah, they can't turn left anymore.
I mean, I think, and that's another cool thing, is that damage to these cars. Like, video games used to not do that. Gran Turismo never really did that until, what, Gran Turismo 3?
Yeah, it might have been. I don't know if they had it on 3.
I think in Gran Turismo 3, you couldn't see it, but I think it would
affect your
car. It
car.
would somehow, it would do the wear and tear on it a little bit.
Because I don't recall it in 2.
Well, it's crazy nowadays. I mean, there's tire wear, there's
Fuel,
temperature, everything actually matters.
Mm-hmm.
I've played the new Formula 1 games.
Oh, jeez.
And there's actually the strategies, pit strategies, and a lot of really cool introductions of how they introduce stuff in the real races. And if you do it with all of the assists and everything off, you're going to have to monitor pretty much everything. You're going to have your crew chief in your ear telling you what's going on with your car and whether you need to pit or not. And if you get into any accidents prior to when your strategy is, they'll tell you to come in earlier or later if your car's doing poorly. And it's pretty interesting. You learn a lot about how they actually function on the track.
There's a lot of simulation, and they're not even racing games as in you'll do the driving. I play Motorsports Manager on my phone, and it's just a little management simulation of a lot of it is behind the scenes, you're building a team, paying drivers, finding the best drivers.
That's what the F1 game does really well now.
And then doing the pit stuff where it's hey, you're running super slicks where everyone else is running semi, compounds. You're running out of rubber. What do you want to do? Do you want to put another set of slicks or super softs, or are you going to put on intermediates? And you have to know, I'm going to figure this out so I have a good strategy for my pit crew. And sometimes you just have accidents, and that's the management side, and that's pretty fun. But I would like to see more integration of the pit stop in a lot of these simulation games. And seeing how that would work out, and maybe having it be you actually have to have a team, and they have to do a mini game when you pull into the pit,
or even the amount you pay for your team is how fast
that's a pay to win right there.
Well,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
Budgeting your full team. That's how F1 does it. Where it's
I gotcha.
You have kind of a salary based on your endorsements and kind of your full team, and you can choose to spend your money on better drivers or better.
Would you do
research.
that in iRacing though, with multiplayer online?
That would be tough to do unless there was a level playing field with salary and how much money everyone started with.
Right.
But it would be a really interesting game mode if you had kind of more time to spare, where you kind of go through and set all of your, this is how much I researched on this part of my car.
Mm-hmm.
This is how much I spent on my crew. That would adjust your actual speeds and how certain things interact on track.
That would be cool, and I especially think that would be cool if they implemented that into a Forza Motorsport. Maybe not a super sim, but a pretty robust simulation style. Is hey, if you're in the career mode, it's a real race team versus just you're a dude with a car now, just go out and race. Okay, you earned a couple money, and now you can go buy another car, and oh look, now you unlocked a new race you can do.
Yeah.
I wish
Formula 1 career manager is pretty cool.
I honestly think, I forget where it was, and again, I stopped playing Gran Turismo about Gran Turismo 4, I think it was, or maybe Gran Turismo 5. Whatever one had Van Halen in the theme song. It's the last one I played. But I remember Forza 4 or 5, they had a very specific career mode and how you could unlock things and how you could progress. You had to kind of start in the slow cars and build up. And then they kind of went away from that, I think, and a little bit later. And it's always there, but the way it was constructed and the constraints were a bit different. I don't see many racing series in the Forza Motorsports where it's hey, you just have to be in an Integra. And everyone else is a stock Integra, but you can put whatever the hell you want on your Integra.
Right. Yeah, there is some of that in some of the more recent ones, but you're right. I remember Gran Turismo 3, it used to be that you had to get the license. Mm-hmm. You actually had to take the test and get the license in the game and do the practice and do the thing. And then, some of the early Forzas, you're right.
It was like Class A, Class B, Class C, and there were like legitimately certain circuits. There was the off-road circuit. There was like...
And they were hard, too. They weren't easy.
Yeah. No, very, very difficult.
You couldn't do like any of the endurance unless you had the certain license.
Or you would have to time trial certain like things at certain speeds to even be able to qualify. And yeah, there was a lot of stuff to it.
When's the last time you saw qualifying in a major league?
Like
the F1 games do it.
Forza got rid of it, and it's so stupid.
You start in the middle of the pack.
Or in the back.
Every time.
So if you're doing your career with F1, you have your open lap days, and you have a certain amount of time. You go back, you change stuff. You have your open qualifying, and then you have your like actual hot lap qualifying. So
maybe
I
should check out the F1.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
I think I might, because that reminds me.
It's on Game Pass.
Is it?
Oh,
I'm gonna have to. Check
I think
out.
2019 might be on Game Pass.
Okay.
But
it's a very cool game. I highly recommend it. It's pretty interesting how
I'll Google
the physics are a lot better as well now. The other game I did want to mention that's not really an endemic car title that I think has done a fantastic job with their vehicles and kind of bringing new people into the car world is Grand Theft Auto.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say GTA. And
honestly,
it's
Grand
really
Theft
fun
Auto,
game.
There's a lot of kids that are starting to learn about cars and start car meets and kind of they've put a lot of emphasis into the customization of their cars in the newest Grand Theft Auto. Obviously, new being relative because it's been about 15 years now. But it really is something interesting seeing a game that's not designed around cars, but implements their cars so well.
Yeah, and I think, was it this one or the last one where they took it away because it used to be in like Vice City and all those games, like the earlier ones, all the cars had the same performance. You could be in like the Venom GT or whatever it was, or you could be in whatever the version of a Honda Civic was.
They all went the same
speed. But the new one, there's faster cars. You can do the performance modifications, and you can set it up on the online play to do like tricks and jumps and fun stuff like that.
Well, and I think more recently they've even done some collaborations with real car manufacturers, and there's also mods for the PC version where you can make legitimate cars and they look really awesome. So I think it's cool that they're actually kind of implementing, even though the cars aren't licensed and some of them aren't named different things, there still are very, very, very close replicas. And it's making a cool car community out of the game.
Without going into any copyrights or, patent infringements on cars.
Yeah, they didn't have to pay Ford or Chevy for the license to that car.
We all know what it is.
Yeah, we know it's a Mustang.
So on Xbox Game Pass, you can actually play F1 2020 if you have the Ultimate, where you have the EA Play.
Okay, cool.
Because that's the EA released it, and it's by Codemasters. Isn't Codemasters the same one? Who else? What other game did they make?
That's a great question.
But
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I did a little bit of I always liked modifying cars in Grand Theft Auto. I did. I never really got into the Grand Theft Auto Online stuff, though.
I got into it a little bit, not super, like not a lot, but it's fun. Like, it's just fun to go around and do the missions in some of the games. But the problem with the online play, it's the same with like most of these online games. Some people suck. And
you out there, you know you suck.
$750,000 modifying your car and someone just blows it up immediately.
You got to get the insurance.
Yeah, you know who you are.
Yeah, you know who you are. Waiting outside of the shop with a rocket launcher.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, you know. Speaking of Game Pass games, I downloaded a game called Wreckfest this week. You guys remember Flat Out?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that. It's a demo derby racing game.
Okay.
It's really fun. At the end of one of the races, I had something that I think it was either a Mustang or resembled a Mustang. And all that was left of the car was like from the wheels, the front wheels to the back wheels. The trunk was gone, the front end was gone, and it was still driving, and everything had fallen off. It was a fun little game.
Okay, Wreckfest.
Check it out.
There's another one on Game Pass right now that's not simulation, not really...
Rocket League?
Well, that's on there. No, it's Art of Rally.
Interesting.
So if you're into that rally, it's by Fun Selector. I think it's Fun Selector. I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to get hate mail or something. But basically, it's a rallying game where everything is kind of in this vignette style where you're up above the car, but you're up really high, and everything looks like toys. Fun Selector Labs Inc. It's actually a lot more difficult than it looks, and you actually have to be really good at like, hey, this is tarmac, this responds differently than this, and like the cars, like they're all off names. So like the Lancia is called the Wedge, right? Because they couldn't call it the Stradale, so it could just be the Wedge. Here's the trailer's playing, but you can kind of see like the vignette kind of boxy artistic style, and it's a lot of fun, and it's just kind of zen because the music's really cool. You get into playing and you just kind of lock in on them, and it does this thing with the screen in your eyes. Like if you've ever played like Guitar Hero, and like you're really into playing Guitar Hero, and then you stop, but yet the world continues to lift, and that like you're watching it come up. It does that. Like you'll be playing for like an hour, and then you look away, and you're seeing the track still in your head, like your eyes. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and if you've got Game Pass, it's free to download.
I will be doing that tonight.
What's the one rally game? The big rally game?
Well, there's Dirt, and then there what used to be. Oh shoot, that I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. There was a famous. It's named after a famous rally driver, like Colin McRae or something like that.
Gotcha. The one I've seen videos of people playing Dirt. That game looks so hard.
It is. I played Dirt 3 for a little bit and stopped because I was like, this is way too hard. I don't know. I couldn't do it for some reason.
So Dirt Rally. I can't remember what it was. But it used to be, I mean, racing, like rally racing in general, looks just insane. And luckily,
just got someone shouting at you the whole time and telling you where to go.
Turn left in 3 seconds. No. Rush was another one. There was I used to play a rally game on Game Boy Color. I used to play it on.
Ooh.
And it was like, it had a rumble pack in it. And it had all these, like, you know how Donut Media right now has those like kind of Funko Poppy cars coming out?
Mm-hmm.
It looked like that. Like that's how all the cars look like in this racing game.
Like bubbly and stuff.
Bubbly, kind of cartoonish, but you could tell like, okay, that's a WRX.
I know which game you're talking about. I don't remember the game.
I can't remember the name of it, but like I played that so much. But it wasn't really like rallying as we know it today. It was kind of like Outrun, where the tracks would kind of come at you.
Okay. The other one that I grew up playing was obviously like ATV versus like the motocross versus ATV racing.
Those got pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean those are all open world, just drive around with whatever crazy vehicles you want.
You end up with your ATV in the bottom of a river.
Right.
You always
or hit by a train.
You always try to find like the biggest hill to just go straight up and like see how far you can
that's
go.
exactly how ATVs work.
Yes.
100%. But I did learn about the Banshee that way, and I owned one of those for a hot minute.
Oh, really?
I sold it. Was being stupid and was like, yeah, sure. Sold it real cheap, and then I realized what they were actually worth now. I'm like,
oh. Yeah, you always have those.
You win some, you lose some.
The one that got away.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is that racing video games, A, allow me access to cars that I probably will never have access to. And B, they do bring, like, I remember playing all these racing games online back when Xbox Live first started, right? And building communities with people that I play with even today, right? And you can still do that today. There's clubs and things like that. So they are another way to bring community to the automotive world. And I think they're kind of overlooked, but it's nevertheless still a great way to experience cars. And we talked about this a little bit last week, which is kind of a downer. We won't end on a downer now, but it's like that might be the only way we experience these cars in the future.
Well, and it's a great way to experience them. I mean, I think you're right about the point you made about the garages. Like, I'm probably never going to have a Le Mans GT40 from each generation. And I'm probably never going to have, some of the McLarens and some of these Ferraris and stuff like that in my garage. But I put that video game in, and they're there.
Yeah, and they were yours, right?
And they're mine.
And that's the other thing is you did have to kind of like earn them, right? I feel like Forza used to be a lot closer to like, oh, I have to actually like do a lot of endurance races to afford that Ferrari. Now it's like Ferraris are like given away right away. But then you have the rare like Shelby Daytona coupes that's like 10 million credits, and you're like,
Right.
why is this 10 million credits? And you get it, and you're like, yeah, it's fun, but
Yeah, you know, you're right, especially with all of the like DLC or just like, hey, we're Forza, we're just gonna give you a random gift of 5 different new cars, and then it's
Which
like,
is cool, but it takes some of the exclusivity.
yeah,
you
it's
know.
like, oh, I didn't really have to work for that at all.
I do hope they get rid of that. That is my least favorite feature of the Forza franchise right now, is that like the roulette wheel of getting like free stuff. Like, just make it so that I know, like, hey, if I complete this race and I come in first, I'm gonna get like this car.
Make it a reward for a certain event.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had to. I know what you're talking about. I almost miss those days where you started out in a Teggy or a Focus or something, and you had to. It was bone stock 'cause that's all you could do. You win your first race, you put an exhaust on it.
That's partially why Need for Speed Underground 2 is one of my favorite. Is like, you started with one of 3 cars. It was like an Eclipse, a
Yeah.
like Gen 2 or Gen 3 Evo, or a STI. And those were the 3 cars you could choose from.
Right. And maybe a Focus. Right.
Yeah, exactly. There were really not many good options, but you raced your way in. You had to make a bunch of credits. You had to upgrade that one enough to compete with the higher class ones, and then at that time, you finally, like, if you beat a certain boss or rival, they'd give you their car.
Right. You
or
get
like,
the pink slip.
Yeah. I mean, it was
was nice
stuff,
of them
and it was
not to take
rewarding.
your car though. If you lost.
Awfully nice
Right.
of them.
Awfully nice. Like, you come back. I'm not going to take your pink slip, but you know, I do miss that challenge of the build,
It's rewarding.
right? Because like I feel that the now Forza, like maybe not so much in Horizon, like I get it. Like, just throw some wild and crazy stuff out there because you're going to throw me into a bunch of different cars right away at the opening game, like the opening mission. But like in Motorsport, and like you mentioned Need for Speed Underground too, it's like, yeah, I want to feel that I am progressing somewhere. And if all of a sudden at the end of the championship I get a roulette wheel and then I win a Ferrari F40, well, guess what?
When I'm level 3.
When I'm level 3, I'm probably not going to want to race in my little, hot hatch anymore. I'm going to go
why
race
would
in
you?
that. So I think it's important that we have that build and be like, yeah, what does an exhaust kit do for me? Hey, look, I'm slightly faster in the straights because I have 10 more horsepower, right? I still can't brake anywhere near like as well, or turning's the same, but I'm a slightly bit faster and I sound a bit different. I can tell my car out of the other ones.
Or what's the performance transmission do? You get the race transmission and the clutch,
the flywheel,
and all of a sudden
yeah.
you can shift faster, and it's just a better experience. So,
Unless you have a steering wheel with an actual 6-speed, then you just shift as fast as you can anyways.
well, yeah, I mean,
But I liked the way that the older Forzas and the older Gran Turismos did it, where you built up to something.
There was a real reward, and it was a very like satisfying thing when you know that to be able to win this race, you need to save up X amount of money to purchase this new upgrade that's going to push you over the edge. And it was hard. You had to race lower stuff. You had to race and just keep racing in the same stuff until you really, really had enough money to purchase that to move up.
I remember that's why I started doing endurance races in Forza.
yeah,
Right? And you could hire drivers, right? And I'd be like, okay, if I hire a driver and he takes 20% and he's doing the race and I'm gone, right? Like, okay, I could be back in an hour and he'll make me 50,000. If I do the race, I'm making 100,000. Well, I'm not going to be here because I got to go. So like, I could pay a driver to race the race, right? And sometimes I did like the drivatar stuff where they're like, hey, the more you race, the better your drivatar will be.
Yeah, or against your friends. Like your ghost essentially
Right.
is battling against other people.
But that's why I spent so much time doing those older races, was because I knew that like this is the fastest path for money that I could then go back to the other races and buy a car or buy a modification that I need, right? The other side of it is I also enjoyed before there were like leaderboards, because you could then race whatever car you wanted. And sometimes you'd pick the lowest car in that entire class, and then you'd spend money to make it better than the others. But if you're looking at a leaderboard, Like you just know. You know what's the fastest car, what everybody's using.
You're just gonna build the 1,000 whatever of the fastest model car.
Yeah, the P999 ranked car, right? And you're just going to go for that one and try to build that one. So I think there's a little less like experimentation. I also feel like there's a lot more balancing of cars in these games that maybe they shouldn't. Like, hey, if it's a Ferrari and it handles better and has more horsepower, it should probably be faster. Like, there's no reason to try to then say, like, oh, well, no, the 911 Carrera S should be close in comparison.
They're both sports cars.
Yeah. And I think it was 7 released, like, homologation rules. It was like, all right, you could just go over to the car selector and be like, all right, I want it homologated. So it's the best, like, it's at the pinnacle rank for that class. And it's like,
or so it thinks. And that was the thing I always thought too. Was I preferred, because I'm a build guy. Like I know what does what in a car.
And tuning.
Right. And I would go, okay, so I need to be whatever, B500. That's my limit. I would just go buy the car and then make the modifications myself instead of letting the game do it, because I felt that I was doing it better. Now sometimes I didn't.
Right.
But I felt like most of the time I had more control over what I could make a car do.
You could build it to your specifications.
Right.
Well, and then it became even easier because it's like, oh, you can just download someone else's ideal profile.
Right.
Like, oh, we're not even going to leave this up to the game's AI to decide. We're going to leave this up to, basically, this is the top-rated one and the most downloaded one. That's probably the ideal, most optimal build possible.
I do like the marketplace. I think the marketplace is cool.
I like it for more the cosmetics side.
I feel bad for the gentleman. This was probably 2011. I was sitting there in the auction house, and I really wanted a car, but they started outbidding me a lot, and like eventually I knew I wasn't going to get it because they were just going to continue to outbid me. And so I bid that car up to like 2 million credits when it was like probably a $400,000 car, and they still bought it. They were still trying to get it. I'm like, I don't know what you want this car so much for. Who knows? Maybe I was the loser in that bet, but I eventually, once it got to 2 million, I was like, nope, you can have it.
Well, the thing that's cool about Marketplace too is like seeing people's creativity with the liveries and or livery, depending which we say.
I really wish there was a way though to like export that system to like a PC with a mouse.
Mm-hmm. I have a friend that does that professionally. Like that's something he enjoys doing, is making these car livery,
whatever. The car wraps.
Exactly, the color schemes of the car, and he does all of the graphics.
Honestly,
all of
if you know how to say that, just like tweet us or whatever. what do kids do nowadays?
TikTok,
TikTok it to us. TikTok at the Midwest Motoring, and we'll see what happens.
Nothing would happen because we don't have a TikTok, but
yet. Hey, we were talking about OnlyFans last week.
Oh my god!
Yeah, well, when's the calendar coming?
Oh gosh.
But no, you're right. It's cool, and I do wish that you could import kind of your own CAD or your own, I guess, Photoshop files from it, because it is a pain in the butt
using a
making
controller.
Those on controller.
Oh god!
It's the shapes. You have to modify the shapes to do it, and
with the analog stick.
Like that's why I would go to the marketplace for the creative stuff. Is like more power to you.
Someone's already made a golf livery.
Yeah, it's like I will upvote the heck out of this. You know, I'll give you as much kudos as I can, because like this takes time and effort and way more patience than I have.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right, and I think most of the people making them are probably making them on the PC version, but
that's true. Well, now they do have the PC version, but like I remember seeing really cool liveries on like Forza 5,
like 2 and 3. Even.
Yeah, well, I mean, same thing with GTA. Like
Mm-hmm.
before it was a PC version, people were making crazy stuff on GTA, and you're like, I mean, it's the same thing with people making these crazy Call of Duty emblems out of block shapes and just random geometry, and then they make like Batman, and you're like, how the heck did you do
how
that?
did that happen? And it's like shaded, and it's got like shadow, and you're like,
I don't understand that.
I made Pac-Man, and it looks horrible.
Yeah, I made a smiley face, and it's awful.
Yeah,
it was literally the smiley face from the stamp from the system, and it still looked bad.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I guess that brings us kind of to the last category, which is what is your favorite racing game right now? Like what would be your desert island racing game of past, present, or future? I guess not future because they're not out yet. We don't know. But
Forza 10. I don't know. I definitely would probably pick a Forza game. I don't know if I remember like 4, 5, and 6 were all really good. 7 was good, but they made some of those changes that we talked about that it really changed the direction and how you played the game.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Forza 4 really stood out to me as being, because I think that was the first one on Xbox One, right? And that one stood out, and it just, I think that would probably be the one.
5 might have been the
was
first
it 5?
one.
Which
yeah,
one had
it was 5.
Which one
I
had
have
the
that.
Ford GT on the cover? That one.
No, the one that
4 was, or maybe that was,
P1. The P1 was the cover car for the first Xbox One, because I have that one. I think it was one of the first games I bought for my Xbox One.
I know that I think it was 3 had the R8 as the cover car. So I don't know what the cover car was for 5. I thought it was like the AMG or something. No, you're right on the P1 though. That was, I think.
Yeah, you're right. It was a Ferrari. I think it might have been 5 is the one I'm thinking of then.
6 was the Ford GT, the
Was
new
it?
Ford GT. The first one, Forza 5, was the McLaren P1, the orange McLaren P1. That was the first one for Xbox One.
What's 7 then? I thought 7 was
7
Porsche.
was the GT2 RS.
GT2 RS. That's
Then
right.
yeah, I'm going with 6. That's the one for me that really stood out. And it's just, that was such a fun game, and I think it was the last one in the series before they made some of these changes, and that's probably the one I'd go with. I still play it sometimes. I'd alternate between 6 and 7.
I think 6 had a little bit, like, that's when the challenge car, or like the card system that had upgrades and like, oh, you brake 20% more efficient during the career mode.
Yeah.
That came out then, and I wasn't a big fan of that. And then they implemented whatever came from Horizon into 7. I remember 5 being light, like in cars. I think it only had like 150 cars, which isn't like that's a crazy amount, right?
Well,
but
that
I
was
think
the
in
first
7
one
right
you could
now,
blow up because they did so much detail.
Correct.
In the interiors, in
that's
every
the one my
car.
buddy was like, yeah, it's a car. I was like, no, but look, the hood lifts. And he goes, yeah, hoods on cars lift, Matt.
Which one was the one that had the little bios of the cars by Jeremy Clarkson?
I think
That
it
was
5 or
Was that
6.
5?
5
So
and 6.
5, you go into the menu screen. When you're selecting through your garage, you could like open every single part of the car, the trunk, and like
That was so
stuff
cool.
like
That
the
was cool.
Paganis
I
and
loved
stuff
hearing
like that.
Jeremy
where-
Clarkson's like take on it. And I remember, I think it was 1 or 2 of the brands actually like sued Forza to be like, you cannot have him say that horrible stuff. Like, I think it was about the DeLorean. Like, he said that the car trapped like famous people in it because like the systems would fail, and like they sued them to get that off of there or something, or they're like a petition to remove his words because they were, you know, slander or whatever. And I was like, holy crap, people take this stuff real seriously.
It's opinion, but I thought it was a cool feature.
I loved it.
But yeah,
Jess, what about you?
I think Need for Speed Underground 2. If I could go back when that was like, I guess graphically relevant, if I could have that same experience that I had the first time playing that, I think that was probably the most enjoyable car game I ever played.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, maybe instead of Desert Island, it should be like, if you could have amnesia and experience a game for the first time, what game would it be?
Yeah, so I mean, just lots of fun memories with that game. We had a Ford Econoline high top conversion van.
Okay.
It was our trip vehicle, so we would go to the beach each year, and it would be a 7-8 hour drive. And we would actually hook our PS2 up to the TV in the van. And I remember so many times just playing Need for Speed in the van. Like it was such a blast, and like there's so many like memories of that game, and just spending time driving around and like upgrading and modifying. They had all the cool like Veil side body kits and just like random cool stuff, and like the creativity behind it. And it was like kind of a revolutionary game because there weren't many games before that where you could actually modify
Yeah.
the bodies and the looks of the car.
Yeah, not in that level of like accessible.
Nitrous coming out, what color it comes out, what color wheels.
It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. But it was cool. And you got different exhaust systems and different stuff that like just visually looked way different.
Right.
And there was never really a game before that you could increase parts and do more performance type upgrades and stuff like that. But it really was the first time that you could externally and cosmetically change the car that much.
Right. No, I think that's a really good one, and I remember that game very fondly. And I think if I could have it remade, like a full-on remake,
like a remaster,
not a remaster, a remake, but with like
modern.
No, not modern cars. Like still those cars from that game. Just put a new physics engine in it. Leave all the things the way they are. Maybe that's a remake or a remaster.
Remaster.
Yeah, maybe that's a remaster. I would definitely pay full price for a remaster
Absolutely.
of that game.
They tried doing a more recent Need for Speed where you could.
I think it was.
No, I think there was one just called Need for Speed that they did more recently where you could make those upgrades and some of that stuff, but like the actual physics and engine weren't updated at all, and it just wasn't good.
We have to blame Need for Speed Underground 2 though for the cringy, awful campaigns that every like tuner style racing game now follows, which is you're either like an undercover cop or you're like a lowlife that just got to town and you've got to go up through the racing leagues and fight all of the bosses of the like, this is the Subaru clan and this is the Honda clan.
See, do we have to blame them or do we have to blame the Fast and Furious series?
Blame them, because there was no reason for that to be really in the video games until that point, right? And yeah, Fast and Furious plays into it, but I think that game and that campaign now lives on in like so many other games. I know Forza made like a mobile drag racing game, and it's that exact kind of thing. It's like, you're an unknown driver, and there's these famous race drivers that have a family, and hey, by the way, there's some back shady deals going on. Ooh.
You gotta
Prove yourself.
Prove yourself. Yeah, you got to get that street cred. But I will say this though, I had so much fun with that game. That's a very good choice.
How about you? What would you say?
Well, that's sitting here and really thinking about it. It's like I love Forza, I love the motorsports games, but the ones I remember loving the most were like 3 and 4. I did really love the Need for Speed Underground games, but I think I got to give it to Project Gotham Racing.
Okay,
like that game to me, I spent so much time with just like, this is my mansion, these are my cars, I've earned them. It was tough to buy those cars, right? And when you could finally buy them, like you displayed them proudly in your garage, and then you could walk in and open the garage door and then just drive it onto the test track. Like, I remember wasting a lot of my life just doing that. There was nothing, I wasn't accomplishing anything, I wasn't racing people online, I was just enjoying the experience of those cars then and there. And I think the game also was pretty fun. It wasn't a serious racing game, and it had a lot of artistic and arcadey stuff with like the drifting and the kudos system, right? But those cars opened my eyes to a lot of cool things that I didn't think I would have like probably experienced other than that. And then obviously Top Gear came around as a show, and I watched that, and that expressed a lot of those. But I remember racing the F40 in that car and the F50 and like just loving listening to the sound of the motor and trying to learn the best way to drift those cars in that game. I think that would probably be my go-to. Like if I had to have a memory wipe and start again, Project Gotham Racing 2 would be it.
Yeah, that is a really, really solid choice. And I agree with you. I spent so much time just, I did play online too, but I did the same thing, just enjoy the car for what it was and, learn new stuff about cool cars.
I did want to say, like, the one game that I wish kind of stuck around a little bit more, and I think they're coming out with another one, I can't remember, is the Test Drive series. Test Drive Unlimited did, like, a Hawaii-based game where it was, like, they tried to do a 1-to-1 Hawaii, and you had a mansion, and you could go buy other mansions, and then you had garages there that you could park your cars in. Very similar to like what the recent Forza Horizon did. And it's like, I love that idea of like earning something, buying a cool place, and storing your cool cars or your favorite car in it. And I think Horizon's doing that more and more. And I'm curious to see what Horizon 5 does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the same thing style that GTA did as well. Obviously,
true,
very
yeah.
different. I mean, but
You
buy
can't murder
buy
people
your,
if they're faster than you.
But you buy your penthouse and you have your underground garage and you display them all, and it's the same sort
You've
of.
got your sky laser.
Yeah, is that what it's called?
I don't know. The death ray thing. Have you not been killed by that before?
No, I've not.
It costs, I think, like 10,000 credits of in-game, and you can just like pinpoint somebody on the map and then just hit a button and they just die. They just die.
That goes back to if you're listening to this, you know who you are.
Just
All right, so if
terrible
you're
people.
looking for the best racing games to revisit or the best racing games to come, I think Horizon 5 is going to be amazing. Like, they've been on a roll. Don't drop the ball, I guess is what I'd say to like Turn 10 and Playground Studios, right? Just don't drop the ball.
Please.
But Underground Racing 2, Need for Speed Underground 2 is a solid choice to go revisit. And then I also think if you're not into it, go check out Game Pass. I know 6 is on there and 7's on there. Mm-hmm. Go check out some of those racing games.
Pretty much any Forza ever released will be on Game Pass.
Yeah. Well,
Almost day one.
Yeah. Well, in the future. I don't think they've got Forza 5 on there.
Okay.
But I think they had 6 and 7. But yeah, guys, though, I mean, I know we kind of rambled a bit, but yeah, that's why we love these video games. That's why we love cars, and these types of video games just strengthen I think all of our love for cars.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it isn't what got me into cars originally, but like being a car enthusiast, having an outlet when I don't have a license and I'm not able to drive yet, like car video games are a huge part of my growing up as a car enthusiast.
Right.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and it gives you something. If you live in a northern climate like us in
Oh,
the
gosh.
wintertime, I play a lot more games in the wintertime than I do in the
Oh, yeah.
summertime. So,
Especially similar racing games. Well, this has been the Midwest Motoring Podcast. Jess, is there anything you want to plug? You want to plug your Twitch?
I mean, I play games sometimes on Twitch.
Sometimes on Twitch.
Twitch.tv /Jess Myers 5 MEYERS.
You got to go find the other 4 that came before you.
There aren't any.
So you picked 5.
you just picked 5.
5 is my favorite number, always has been. That was like my sports number growing up, so I will always be 5. I didn't miss out on the 1 through 4.
Okay. James, what's your gamer tag on Xbox Live?
I am Big Fish 117.
Big Fish 117. Okay, that's a lot more clever than mine. I was a dumb college student when Xbox Live came out, so I'm Scarface B. Go find us on Xbox. Come
my
play with
Xbox Live gamer tag is the M Bros.
us. The M Bros.
Yeah, it was me and my brother's account. It's
Okay.
not them Bros, but it's
The
the
M.
M Bros.
Got
Even
it.
though it's spelled the same, and it's all one word.
Them Bros.
Them bros. That's it. Them bros.
Them Bros.
Them Bros.
Well, again, this has been the Midwest Motoring Podcast. Thanks so much for getting to the end. We really appreciate it, and we'd appreciate a like and a subscribe or a comment or a rating. We always look at those and try to improve every day. So we'll catch you guys on the next one. And as always, stay classy. Be cool. I don't know. What do you want to say?
I like stay classy.
Until you did that face.
I loved it.
Stay classy, San Diego.
Bye, guys.